Hi everyone, before we go into the podcast, I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I'm super grateful for your continued loyalty and support. If you could do me a quick favour, if you could give me a review on Apple Podcasts, it really helps the algorithm and it will help this podcast go up the lists. If there are any subjects or topics that you want me to cover, then please do reach out to me on DM on LinkedIn and I will do my best to find the best guest for that subject or topic. This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. This podcast will interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and people in their careers. We will delve into their journey to success, key life milestones, and go deep into their area of expertise. This podcast will inspire and educate with great guests. Get ready to learn from others' successes and failures. Today we have Jeff Perry, who is a leadership and career coach for engineers and tech professionals. Hello, Jeff. How are you?
Hi, Mark. Glad to be with you.
Yeah, it's great for you to be with me. I really appreciate your time. Okay, let's go straight into it. So your education. So as I said at the top, you work with engineers and tech professionals. So you started with an engineering degree at Brigham University. I did some reading and you said that it was because you enjoyed maths and science and you wanted to create and design cool stuff. So tell me a little bit about why you chose the engineering degree.
Yeah, so that was kind of as I was a kid growing up, like I said, had some of those natural affinities towards the math and science stuff, but I didn't just love, solving math problems or science problems or something. I was like, how do I use this to do cool stuff? And when I was a kid, that meant like rockets and spaceships and stuff like that. But at one point I wanted to work for NASA or something, but that wasn't where we ended up. But mechanical engineering, I think I did decide, hey, I want to be a mechanical engineer. This was maybe when I was 14 or 15. I think it was in like ninth grade. And I never changed my major or anything when I was going through my undergraduate education. And so I stuck with that and did that for a few reasons. First of all, the engineering idea and some of the things that you could do with that, there were a lot of directions I knew that I could take that. And even if I ended up not wanting to stay in engineering, it's always been looked at as a pretty versatile approach that engineering education and background and experience can allow you to succeed in other areas. Even if I decided at some point that I wanted to go to business or something like that, that engineering education would serve me well, no matter where I ended up. So I stuck with it and enjoyed that.
So one of the people that I quite like as a thought leader is Dan Pena. I don't know if you know Dan Pena, but he talks about he's about building businesses and scaling businesses, and he says that engineers are the best students because they might not get it straight away because they've got their engineering understanding, but the way your brain is programmed as an engineer, once you get it, you really get it.
Yeah, I think that's true of a lot of engineers, and it can be a blessing and a curse in some ways to be kind of programmed that way, because engineers are also naturally very skeptical and cynical. So even as we'll get into this, as I work with a lot of engineers in my work now, sometimes overcoming some of those hurdles can be a challenge for some of the people that I work with.
And you also studied in Israel, Turkey, and Jordan. That's quite a variety of different places that you moved to in your student days.
Yeah, so that was actually a study abroad program that BYU or Brigham Young University has. They have a campus that is in Jerusalem that is there. And so I did a semester, so it was about 3.5 months. And then we did a number of multi-day field trips to some of those other locations in Jordan and Turkey. And so got to see, and that was my first international experience personally, being out of the United States. Mm-hmm. And, so got thrown into completely different cultures and experiences. And that area, certainly, clash of history and cultures and religions and political strifes, as we all know. And, it was an eye-opening experience for me early on in my educational career. And lucky enough, also met my wife on that trip. So it turned out really good in another way as well. So
fantastic. So we'll come back to your MBA in a minute, which you did a little bit later on. But I usually stay clear of politics and religion on my podcast, but I thought it was really interesting that you spent 2 years at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints working as a missionary. Do you want to just tell me a little bit about why you chose to spend 2 years, or maybe you didn't choose initially to spend 2 years, but why you spent 2 years doing that as a missionary?
Yeah, great question, Mark. And this is a pretty personal thing, but also a huge part of what I believe is kind of my personal development over the years. So for those who aren't familiar with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, for many years it's kind of been known as the Mormon Church. It's very common that young people at the ages of 18, 19, early 20s will serve these missions for the church. And the way that sort of works is you decide that you'd like to serve that mission. And for males, the standard time is 2 years. For females, it's a period of 18 months. So you put in essentially an application to go through an ecclesiastical process. And then church leaders then give you an assignment somewhere in the world. So I have friends who went to India or Argentina or Mexico or anywhere in the United States and Africa and anywhere in the world you can think of that the church is allowed to send missionaries. Certainly there's some countries that don't allow proselyting. And for me, I went to Texas. And so I spent 2 years in Texas, connecting with people, sometimes knocking on doors and just, meeting people and sometimes just serving people in different ways and engaging in community efforts and things like that. And so this is a huge part of kind of my process of really kind of growing up and solidifying my own faith in those formative years, and also being able to learn how much I love seeing transformations in other people. Sometimes, being able to work through people with significant challenges and things they were going through and seeing transformations in them is extremely rewarding. And that was some of the early times that I was able to see that happen for some people that I was able to actively work with. And so it was a really rewarding experience for me.
So where do you,
but you're away from family, friends, and work and school and all that for a couple of years.
How do you think that's impacted your future self? Because you said that you saw people transform, and I know you talk about quite a lot in your area of expertise at the moment that sort of personal development and personal transformation is important to you. But do you think it affected your future self in many ways, in different ways?
Absolutely. So there's a few things that I think that helps with. First of all, personal confidence and being able to speak to people. There were times that, like I said, knocking on doors and people I've never met, and they open the door and something has to come out of my mouth. And so being able to strike up conversations with people I've never met before over and over and over again was good. Dealing with rejection. Get rejected over and over and over again in a lot of different ways, and how that builds some resilience there. So that certainly helped. Speaking to groups, opportunities to speak to groups of dozens or sometimes hundreds or even a couple thousand in certain circumstances in a church setting, certainly, but still that public speaking opportunity, which was growing and developing that confidence to be able to do that. So a number of things there, and like we talked about, being able to really dive into the personal pieces of helping people, transform and make some changes, and really finding the reward and the joy that comes from that has certainly influenced the part of the ways that I do things now, and being able to, I like to say, religious or not, helping people kind of unlock their own potential and see a better way of living that can provide more happiness and joy and fulfillment for them. Even if we're not talking about God or religion in any context, is a great way to help people, brighten their lives and impact the world. So certainly there.
Okay, let's fast forward a little bit to, you spent a year interning at a couple of insurance companies and then Areva NP in manufacturing production of nuclear fusion or nuclear fuels, sorry. Why did you, because you also were a maths teaching assistant. So when you came back from your time with the Mormons for 2 years, you tried different things. It looked like you were trying to find yourself or trying to find where you wanted to be.
Yeah, so this is a number of different pieces. As I was working through my undergraduate degree, part of it is just like finding part-time jobs to help get through school and get out of debt. So that was part of just being able to teach math and do some math tutoring and stuff while I was doing that while I was directly in school. And then a couple of internships I did after my second year of engineering school. It was hard to land an engineering related internship, but my father was a insurance agent for New York Life and had connections at the home office in New York City. And so I was able to get an internship doing some things there. And so that was another eye-opening experience. I was able to go to the big city and spend some time there and work in kind of my first big corporate environment and learn a lot of things there as a young college student. And so that was eye-opening in a number of different ways. But I was working on marketing analytics, and they chose me even though I was an engineering degree because they know, hey, this guy can work with numbers. We can trust him and get him to figure out, even though I knew nothing about marketing at the time. So
awesome.
that was a fun experience. And then the other internship working on nuclear fuels, honestly, I had started dating my wife after that international experience, the study abroad. And she was going home for the summer to work to earn money for school before we went back to school together. And I had another internship lined up, an engineering internship lined up at aviation company that I was excited about, but I didn't want to be, but that meant that she was going to be in Washington and I was going to be in Texas. I didn't really want to do the long distance thing. And so I started looking for other internship opportunities closer to where she was at and landed that and ended up doing that so we could spend more time together over that course of dating. And we ended up getting married a few months later. So,
oh, well, congratulations.
That was I was lucky to find that, but that was, you might say, pushed along by the relationship side of things.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to keep moving at a pace because I want to talk about what you're currently doing now. So, but there's a couple of points that I just want to touch points where I want to discuss. So you spent some time at General Motors as a business analyst. Is that right?
Partially business analyst, mostly as a software developer, actually.
Right. Okay. So you worked with critical vehicle design. So tell me, I'm fascinated with cars. I love cars. My whole family were car fanatics. So what did you do there at General Motors? Yeah.
So having a mechanical engineering degree, one of the things you learn a lot about is doing design, 3D design of mechanical parts. And obviously, a large car company like General Motors has thousands of engineers doing all sorts of pieces of design and going through standard processes and checks and things they need to do to make sure they're meeting quality standards. So how I ended up with the job is through some research opportunities I had as an undergraduate where we were doing some software development on some of those 3D design systems, and General Motors was expanding the capabilities to do automation in that space.
Right.
So think about if you're designing a wheel for a car or a rim, and so they could put in a few parameters and they could automatically create that geometry without having to do that, every step along the way, or go through a bunch of design checks in an automated way. So it saved hundreds of hours of engineering time when we could automate a lot of those processes. So this was an opportunity for me. I didn't have a ton of experience in software development, but I saw that a lot of the industry was going to grow where you needed to have these combinations of skills. So I saw this as a way to push myself to learn some of those skills while still staying connected to the mechanical design industry, but learning some of those new things in software development and agile and Scrum and some of those things that are pretty commonplace now. But I gained a lot of experience there doing that.
Yeah, I spent a bit of time being a business analyst and a project manager in technology as well. So it's all fairly familiar stuff for me anyway. So you then started your own business, JR Perry LLC, which was slightly a slight change from your engineering. So you started creating logos, websites, email optimization. So why did you, after quite a structured education and experience, what made you drive to that entrepreneurial side of you?
Yeah, so honestly, it wasn't too long into my time at General Motors and writing a lot of software code that I realized, like, hey, this is okay. I'm learning a lot here, but I wanted to develop, and I felt like I was already feeling constricted as far as how I was able to grow and develop and use some of my more creative talents.
Yeah.
And so had some friends who were, building some physical products business, in particular leveraging the Amazon platform. And so I gave that a try and went through a training program and learned a lot and built up my first websites and was sourcing products from China and the United States and sending those to Amazon. So I built up, brand logos and all that stuff across a number of different products that I was selling online. And so that was a way for me to kind of, test the entrepreneurial waters and made a little bit of money doing that, learned a lot from it, and did that for a couple of years before I moved to my next.
Why did you close the business?
There were a number of other transitions that I was going through when I closed it. At that point, we had moved, our family was growing, and we had purchased our first house and were engaged in a number of improvement projects. And I just didn't have the same passion to keep throwing the time that was necessary into it. So I just kind of let that fizzle and moved on to the next thing so I could focus on the other things that I was working on at the time, while still knowing that at some point I was going to get back to entrepreneurship.
Okay. We'll talk about why entrepreneurship in a minute. But then you went to Meter Group, which was about transforming manufacturing operations. Was that to have a bit more stability with money and sort of if you were doing works on houses and things like that? Is that the reason why you started with them?
Yeah, there was that, and certainly another opportunity to grow. My first formal leadership opportunities were there, and got to do a number of things. It was a smaller company, about 200 people, and so I got to put on a lot of different hats over the course of my time there, from kind of product development and really related to like product management work, through manufacturing process improvement and other things. And also during that time had opportunities to do corporate training work. The company was going through a process of merging with a company that they had acquired and a rebrand and kind of a revisiting of a lot of their corporate values and strategies. And as part of the leadership, as part of an early team that went through a corporate training, because there was actually a lot of strife as we were making some of these changes. The change management process we were actually really struggling with it. And so the leadership team brought in some consultants that in particular were helping to work on mindsets and using that as a foundation for the change that we were moving through. And so as part of the leadership team, we went through an initial 2-day workshop. And after we went through that, we were kind of like, okay, what are we going to do with this? And learned that there were opportunities to kind of do a train the trainer opportunity where we could trained some facilitators in the company to facilitate that same workshop and things for the rest of the company. And I raised my hand at that point and said, hey, this is something I'd like to do. And I don't overstate it when I say that going through some of that literally has changed my life, transformed me. Some of the insights I gained around, how I was working with people and interacting, and some of the changes that I needed to make and still need to make has been transformational for me. And that was about 4 years ago when I started on that path. And so I got to go through and with a couple other people train the whole rest of the company on these principles and teach that and learn a lot about myself through the process. And that kind of reiterated this feeling of unlocking for me that when I was helping other people transform and make changes and see the improvements that they were making, that's when I felt most alive at work. Not when I was working on a technical problem or writing code or designing something. When I connected with a human that was making changes and saw some breakthroughs, that's what I really loved. And that unlocked that for me and really planted a seed that, has certainly grown into what I'm doing now.
Absolutely. All right, before we get on to what you're doing now with More Than Engineering, so what did you learn about yourself by going through that process of teaching other people?
I think I learned that, first of all, I learned that there's a lot more that I have to learn.
Right.
There were some of those things, there were 2-day workshops, and you're trying to help people kind of uncover and recognize ways that they are a part of the problems that they're dealing with and taking personal responsibility, and the ways that we see others have a huge influence in our ability to influence each other and get things done together. So the company that we got this material from is called the Arbinger Institute, and they talk about seeing people. Are we seeing people as people, or seeing people as objects who don't matter like we matter? And making that shift is interesting. And there were multiple times where I'd be, home, and my wife would make comments like she'd say, it seems like you're really gaining a lot and learning a lot through this process. But sometimes I recognize that when you come home, there's 2 different versions of you that comes home from work. And so even in the midst of me teaching these things, I was recognizing that, man, I can teach that, but just because I'm teaching it doesn't mean that I am living this 100% of the time. And there are ways that I still need to move the needle. If we're on a scale of 1 to 10, I may be at 2.1, let's at least try and get to 2.3 and move the needle a little bit. There's a lot of work I need to do here. So, but the understanding of awareness and progress rather than perfection through the process is a big deal. So that unlocked that. And then certainly being able to see some of the changes that people made. There were some people who were literally, before we went through this process or training, were on the brink of getting fired. They were causing problems in their teams, and were really just not doing well at all. And unlocked some things inside of themselves that they knew they needed to change and recognize that, and were finally able to recognize that, acknowledge that they were part of the problem instead of pointing their fingers everywhere else. Did they keep their job? That they got promoted and became some of the best members of the team as they move forward. And so there's some pretty cool experiences and ways that some of the executive team were able to, break down some of those barriers that were going on, and some cool stories that came out of that process.
Amazing. Okay, so August 2019, you started More Than Engineering. So I think I read that you say it's personal development with science and engineering to improve leaders. So tell me about your business. Tell me about the structure, how you position yourself, and just tell me about your business.
We'll be back after a quick break. Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show. Meet the future of healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health. Actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match you, your disease, with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, meet the future of healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So it came about when I was going through this transition. I was at another one of those career plateaus when I was at Meter Group, feeling like something else needed to change. Personal growth is huge for me. If I ever feel like I'm stalled out or stagnant, then that's not a happy place for me. So I was exploring other opportunities in the company and kind of had some frank conversations, said, hey, either we can find something different for me here, or it's probably time for me to go. But I didn't know what was on the other side there. We explored some things. Nothing was quite a good fit for me and the company. And so I left, and when it was decided that was going to be the case, I still didn't know if I was going to go look for another job or if I was going to start my own thing. But I spent a lot of time, multiple weeks, just doing a lot of introspection. I spent a lot of time in my journal. Obviously, I'm a religious person. We talked about earlier. I was praying and trying to think, what would be the next thing for me. And eventually, as I was thinking about business ideas, and I came on this kind of combination of the engineering and the coaching and the personal relationship stuff that I love. How could I combine that? And I didn't have a word for that now. I would now call that a genius zone, this combination of skills that you're able to combine in a unique way. And even finding ways that engineering principles can work and teach us things about personal development. And so, and when I started journaling about that was the first time that I couldn't stop writing. The ideas were just flowing and flowing and flowing. And so I kind of took that as a sign and thought about that and been trying to build that ever since. So is this personal development, leadership, and turn into career coaching as well, for engineers and technology professionals. So at this point, probably the bulk of what I do is maybe more in the career coaching space, but I'm never going to, just say I'm like just a resume writer or something like that. I really work on the foundations and work people with some of the mindset transformations, building their confidence, understanding how they're trying to connect with people, and then understanding and unlocking career clarity for people. What do they really want? There's so many people who get to those career plateaus or feel stagnant and they say, hey, I just need something different. And they think the grass is just greener on the other side, but they don't actually know what it is that they want to do. And for some people, that's another type of career opportunity. For some people, I've had clients that said, hey, I'm going to start my business because they have an idea and that's what they really want to do. Whatever that turns into, we unlock that for them, the clarity that they want. And then we talk about how to get there. And then other people, it's on the leadership side, it's building leadership tools and skills from that foundational mindset, so that they're not just doing things differently, but they're actually transforming and becoming a different person. And so there's a combination of kind of how we do work. I have a course and some group coaching, and then also one-on-one coaching as far as how we structure it.
Okay. There's lots of things to unpack there. Let's leave leaders to one side for the minute. We'll come back to how you work with leaders. But I'm just interested about this career transformation, this idea of being able to. So I give a little bit of myself. A couple of years ago, I had multiple bereavements, and I wanted to change something in my career, and it would have been really helpful to spoken to you at that time. But I decided that I wanted something different. I didn't know what it was, but I needed a different experience. That whole aspect of sort of career transformation or transition, sometimes it's not transformation, it's transition. How what's your sort of typical client that comes to you? Is it someone that's been, I was in a job for 13 years, but I knew I needed something different. I needed to do something. Are they generally people that plateau or get to a point where they need change? What's your experience with these types of people?
Yeah, so probably the sweet spot are these people in some sort of plateau, kind of a 5 to 15 years of work experience sort of thing. And a lot of them have, done good work, but maybe in some cases have been just reactive in their career and just sort of taking opportunities that have come to them instead of being proactive and really saying, what do I really want out of my career in the next few stages? And that happens to all of us. Just kind of my story I was talking about earlier, very relatable to this. I knew I wanted something different, but I didn't know what it was. And so I needed to kind of uncover that. And that's just a process that a lot of people need to go through and maybe for the first time really think, what do I want life to look like? What kinds of skills do I want to be building? Do I want to be working? Sometimes people are working crazy hours, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. Or some people just feel like I'm just feeling stuck and I'm not making any growth, but they want to get on a leadership track and figure out how to do that. And so it can take a lot of different angles as far as where they end up going, but it really comes down to, we unlock some of these things. I talked about the idea of the genius zone, trying to identify what's their genius zone or sort of or where can they find their sense of flow, to use that principle from some of the research that's out there, where they're challenged, but also have some proficiency and passion and interest in what they're working on, and find ways that they can then communicate the value they can bring to a corporation, or unlock that in building perhaps a business idea if that's where they end up.
Do you do analysis in the sense of, if you're working with someone, do you talk through what type of companies do you want to work for? Do you want for a big corporate, small company, small medium enterprise? Do you do analysis in that sense as well?
Yeah, 100%. Because finding those things, we go through a few different layers, and sometimes we're figuring out what are the criteria. And sometimes there are criteria that they put in as far as what they want that are kind of non-negotiables. That say, these are things that I'm not going to negotiate on, like it has to be this. And they're sometimes things are getting thrown into kind of a nice to have thing. Hey, if we can have most of these things true, that would be great. Recognize that getting all of those things to be true would be really difficult. But getting those things and at least identifying what it is that they want and those parameters, so they can use that as a filter when they're looking at companies and opportunities, instead of just accepting whatever comes along the way first. It allows them to focus their efforts when they're trying to make that a reality, rather than just so many people in career transformation just trying to throw out job applications and hoping they get a bite somewhere. And it's really unfocused, and they usually end up in positions that aren't actually any better than where they came from.
What's more important, skills or mindset?
Well, if you were asking me, I would say mindset. But you need to be able to use that mindset to appropriately communicate that you still have the skills to deliver the value that a company needs. Okay. So the mindset helps you make that move and communicate with people in the right way. Having the right mindset is going to allow you to have the confidence in yourself, because if you're making a transition, trying to get into a new role, why would anyone want to hire you if you don't have the confidence in yourself that you can do that job? So you need to believe in yourself that you have those skills, and you need to have those skills, at least enough skills that you're already bringing to the table, or at least the skills to learn what you need to learn in there. And that goes back to mindset as well, kind of a growth mindset approach that if there's something you don't know now, you believe that you can learn it and grow in that way, so you can still do what needs to be done.
Would you say you're So you are an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, but would you say the skills that you use as a career transformer or trying to help on transition, do you think it's more entrepreneurial skills, or do you think it's sort of career experience that drives your business forward?
It's hard to separate all of that, Mark, because I think all of life, every life experience that we have informs how we go about doing things, and the conversations and the perspectives that we have. I can only speak from my own perspective. And so when we're talking about career stuff, I can certainly speak a lot about my own career experiences and relating with a lot of the engineers and a vast swath of different experiences and industries that they're in based on those career experiences that they had. But the way that I go about delivering and doing that comes from a lot of my entrepreneurial endeavors and things that I've tried out and the things that I'm continuing to build. And so I don't think you can completely separate it, say it's one or the other. And some of the things that I've learned and teach people, and even making these transitions, are lessons I only would have learned had I gone through the entrepreneurial experiences that I've had thus far. And so I guess I'd just say all of the above, because what they're getting is me, not just career Jeff or entrepreneur Jeff. They're getting Jeff who has all those experiences.
Okay, awesome. So let's talk about leaders as well. So I know you work with leaders. So there's as many different types of leaders as any. I've done some research on leaders, and as I say, I think there's 25. It's around like 20 to 30 different types of leaders. But as a general rule, what do you think holds back people from becoming leaders? Is it themselves? I would imagine it's often not necessarily their performance, it's themselves. But what do you think is holding people back to being that next generation of leaders?
Yeah, so one of the reasons why, some of the things that unlocked for me, going back to some of the mindset principles, right? So what do they believe about themselves? What do they believe about the people that they're working with? And how they're approaching the challenges they're dealing with. And there are a number of different mindsets we can talk about. I connected with another researcher named Ryan Gottfredson, who kind of has done a lot of research on 4 different mindsets. Some that are pretty well known. You think about the growth mindset and Carol Dweck and some of her work she's done. But other things like being open-minded versus closed-minded. Are you more promotion-oriented, focusing on opportunities versus focusing on prevention, like avoiding failure, avoiding loss, things like that? And then the one from the Arbinger Institute that I originally started with, are we more focused on, are we more outward or inward is what they call it? Am I more focused on helping and seeing other people, or more self-focused? And there's some interplay there, but there's enough distinction that you can look at those different mindsets in a number of different ways. And so building not just what they do differently, I think sometimes we get to leadership stuff, we go right to skills and like, this is how you need to be communicating or listening or presenting yourself, or we talk about executive presence or something like that. Those are all good things. But when we talk about just what we need to do differently, we're sometimes missing the who we need to be differently. And the leader needs to go through that personal transformation and increase awareness, emotional intelligence. And some of that goes back to the mindset and other things, so that we can become a different person who is worth who people see as worth following, because you're not just dictating to everyone. You're the kind of person that they respect, admire, and creating a vision that people want to follow.
Awesome. So I see you've got a podcast yourself, the Engineering Career Coach podcast. So tell me a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, so this is in partnership with a company called the Engineering Management Institute. So I don't actually own the podcast, but I host it for them and have been since fall of 2020. And a great thing, the podcast has been around since I think 2013, so it's pretty well established and perfect for the niche of the people that I work with. And so I get to host it, and it's about every other week. And we talk to people of all different backgrounds, but mostly focus on various engineering and technical industries. Sometimes we're diving into technical principles, and sometimes we're talking about leadership development, personal development. Sometimes we're talking about entrepreneurship or finance. So we cover a lot of different topics that engineers and related people might be interested in, talking about personal and professional development. So it's pretty wide open, but in this kind of engineering space as far as what we end up getting to talk about. So it's a lot of fun to do that.
It is. Podcasting is great. I love doing this. Future endeavors. So what's the plans for the next few years?
Yeah, a number of different things. So like I said, probably the majority of the people I work with right now are in that career coaching, career transformation space. I'd love to continue to work on building more of the leadership development, personal development side of things, and then get opportunities and engagements more with probably not large corporations would be my best fit, but smaller corporations who are trying to build out, their technical personnel and build their teams. A lot of these startups and things are rapidly growing, and they think about products and services, but they don't think or spend that much time on the people that they're developing. And so really working on the leadership and personal development side for those early stage companies. And I'm having some opportunities to do that, working with some perhaps startup incubators and accelerator things and being able to do some mentorship there. Some things are in the works there. So looking to build out some more of that sort of work. But honestly, Mark, while there's a lot of growth and opportunities that I see in this space, because engineering and technical professionals, they're so smart, they think they can do everything themselves, and a lot of things they can. And so overcoming and seeing this value of a coach for them is a hard thing to overcome for a lot of people in that industry. But I'm connected, and there are a number of us. There's not a lot of us who are kind of doing coaching in this technical or engineering industry or STEM. Right. But there are a few of us, and I think there's going to be a rising tide of many more. And I just want to be on the forefront of building out, hey, how can we go beyond these technical skills and build, the kind of people that we want to be, and think about the cultures we want to build in the corporations and the careers that we want to build as individuals, so that we can live our best lives. Because I really do think that engineers and technical professionals will have a huge, huge impact in where technology and industry and the economies go in future years. Even as we build in more technologies and artificial intelligence and machine learning and other things and automation, there's humans behind that, right? And so if we can build those people, our technology is going to work better, but it's also going to be the right sorts of things that we actually need to build what we're building as life goes on. So I want to build the humans behind the technology as we move forward. And that's really part of what drives what I do.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the interview. I asked the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quickfire questions. They don't need a quickfire answer. First one is, what's the best decision that you made?
To marry my wife. Yeah, she's been fabulous. And a huge support for me.
All right. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
I'm going to go with a quote from Stephen R. Covey, the author of The 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. He talks about seek first to understand, then to be understood. Right. And that process of really seeking to understand the people that we're working with before we start talking and preaching them is a huge piece, and something I continue to work on and need to develop.
Awesome. Who helped you most in your career?
I had a leader that really helped me with this transition into when I was in my first leadership role, and then also transitioning out when I was moving to entrepreneurship, who she was extremely supportive of every step along the way. And she was very personal, but also pushed me in ways that I really needed. Her name was Kelly, and I really appreciate the really personalized approach to be aware of what I needed at every step along the way.
Awesome. Do you have any regrets?
My only regrets are when I don't learn from from things. So when I make the same mistake twice, that's when I regret it. If I make a first mistake, that's fine. If I make it again, that's when I regret not learning from it the first time.
Okay, good answer. What are you most proud of?
I think I'm probably most proud of. I'm a family guy, so I'm going to go with my kids. I've got 3 beautiful kids, 2 daughters and a son, and being able to be a part of seeing them grow up and really trying to build a business that allows me to stay closer and connected with them was part of the reason why I built this in the first place. So I could be more present for my family. And so being a part of that, even just some of the time just sitting and reading with them and seeing the stories that they uncover and the ways that are growing is just some of the greatest joys of life.
Absolutely. What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy means impact, and what and fulfillment. Really feeling like I was able to impact and help other people in some way. Do I care how many people are at the funeral or whatever? No, but I hope that what I'm doing in little ways or big ways really has an opportunity to make people change and improve something about what they're doing in their lives. And when I get those, just really sincere thank yous with the work that I do with people when they have really made a change, that's me building a legacy as far as I think about it.
Awesome. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, so probably easiest thing, I'm really active on LinkedIn. If you look up Jeff Perry, my main website is morethan-engineering.com, or my main program is called the Engineering Career Accelerator. So it's engineeringcareeraccelerator.com, or that podcast that you talked about, the Engineering Career Coach podcast, can be found on just about any podcasting platform out there.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for your time. It's been really interesting speaking to you.
It's been fun, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.